Welcome back, Fan-Fueled family, and welcome to another bonus video. In the bonus video last week, we took a look at my top 7 favorite SHIKAI in Bleach. Today, we're going to look at my top 7 Bankai. Like I said last time, my criteria for this list is not power or utility or who we've seen them overcome, but rather my own personal preferences. If you've got a different opinion, tell me down in the comments. I want to hear what your favorites are. And, like last time, I'll only be covering Bankai that are confirmed as Bankai. Now remember, the abilities of a Shinigami's Bankai are always a direct evolution of their SHIKAI. A Zanpakuto that creates fire in SHIKAI isn't going to be altering sensory perception in Bankai. The way Kubo described it in an interview is that the SHIKAI is a reflection of the Shinigami's power, while the Bankai is their Zanpakuto's spirit asserting its ego. First, 3 honorable mentions. I really like these Bankai, but I couldn't justify putting them above any of the 7 I chose for the main list. For our first honorable mention, we have Captain Sajin Komamura's Bankai, Kokujo Tengen Myo, translated as Divine Retribution, Black Ropes of Ruination. When Sajin activates his Bankai, an entire giant manifests, clad in armor and wielding an enormous sword. This giant then mirrors Sajin's movements so he can fight on a much larger scale. I know a lot of people don't like this Bankai because it does have some massive drawbacks. Any damage sustained to the giant will be inflicted on Sajin as well, but the fact that it's one of only a tiny number of Bankai that can actually be repaired, and just how cool it looks, earns it an honorable mention. I also just really like Sajin. I mean, how can you not love this face? The second honorable mention is someone we saw on the SHIKAI list, Captain Commander Genryusai Shikakuni Yamamoto. His Zanpakuto is one of the most powerful fire-type Zanpakuto in all of Bleach, and one of the strongest, period. We saw last time that his SHIKAI wreaths his blade in flames and incinerates everything in Yamamoto's path. So, what can be more over the top, more powerful than that? Well, you'll be surprised when you see it. Zanka no Tachi, literally translated as Longsword of the Remnant Flame. The flames seem to go out. What is this thing? It looks like a burned out husk. Well, that's because Zanka no Tachi takes all the power of Ryujin Jaka, all the flames it has produced, and condenses them into the blade itself, specifically the tip. Imagine all those flames, all that power and heat that can be felt for miles, all condensed and compressed into the blade of a katana. That is Zanka no Tachi. Zanka no Tachi has 4 abilities. The first is Zanka no Tachi Higashi Kyokujitsujin, which is activated upon release and concentrates all of those flames into the blade. The blade no longer burns, but anything it touches is incinerated to ash. Zanka no Tachi Nishi Zanjitsu Gokui, also activated upon release, surrounds Yamamoto in a cloak of flames that are invisible to everyone unless he chooses to reveal them. This cloak of flames is over 15 million degrees Celsius. That's comparable to the center of the sun. At that temperature, heat would not manifest as fire, but rather it's Yamamoto's spiritual power roiling in the form of flames. Zanka no Tachi Minami, Kakaju Monokshi Daisojin, is probably the most terrifyingly impressive aspect of the Bankai. It raises the skeletal corpses of all of those his sword has slain to fight on his behalf. Further, he can bring out specific corpses such as his foes' fallen allies to mess with their heads. Finally, Zanka no Tachi Kita Tenshi Kaijin takes all of that immense heat and flame and focuses it into a single powerful slash that vaporizes whatever it hits. Our final honorable mention is also someone that was on the list for SHIKAI, the lovable goofball captain Shunsui Kyoraku. Now you remember that his SHIKAI, Katen Kyokotsu, plays children's games, right? So what on earth can his Bankai be? What is a natural evolution of children's games? Well, it's adult games. And no, not like that, you perverts. It's more like a play, a performance, a tragic tale of suffering and loss. Katen Kyokotsu, Karamatsu Shinju, translated as Bones of Heavenly Blooming Madness, Withered Pine Lover's Suicide, is effectively a final resort, and Shunsui will only use it if there's no other option, if he absolutely must kill his opponent no matter the cost to himself. Upon activation, black tendrils spread out from him, binding Kyoraku and his foe into the play. His Zanpakuto spirits Katen and Kyokotsu physically manifest upon this release, and those within the effect's domain feel melancholic despair. Ichidanmei Tamerai Kizu no Wakachiai binds his body with his opponents, and any wounds inflicted on one will be inflicted on the other, representative of the story of a man who suffers the same wounds as his partner but cannot die from them. Nidanmei Zanki no Shitone afflicts the foe with black spots all over their body, causing them to bleed from these many wounds. This second act continues the story, the man feeling shame after wounding his partner and falling incurably ill from that shame. Sandanmei, Dangyo no Fuchi, floods both Shunsui and his opponent with enough water to surround both of them, and they remain trapped until one of them runs out of Reiatsu and drowns. This continuation of the play is the depiction of the 2 characters from the story throwing themselves into rushing waters. Finally, Shime no Dan, Ito Kiribasame Chizome no Norobue is the final act. Shunsui sheathes his blades and winds a white thread around his foe's neck and pulls it taut, cutting their throat open and destroying their head to kill them. Shunsui likens this to the man's partner ignoring his pleas and mercilessly cutting his throat. That's pretty dark, right? And really powerful, but it's not quite enough to pass the number 7 entry, which is... Captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurotsuchi is the creator's favorite character. Kubo even cosplayed as Mayuri. Me? I'm not a big fan of him. He's just really heartless and that doesn't jive with me, but I can't deny the man's Zanpakuto is really fascinating. Kurotsuchi is a scientist first and foremost. He doesn't care for battle unless it can gain him new information for his research. Because of that, he doesn't keep up with his swordplay and instead finds ways around it, usually by tweaking his Zanpakuto, Ashisogi Jizo, in ways that allow him to quickly incapacitate or kill his foe with minimal fuss. His Bankai, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo, is suitably over the top and insane. Where his Shikai just inflicts a potent poison on his foe with each cut, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo manifests a massive caterpillar-like creature with a baby's head. This thing exhales a powerful version of that poison, and it's lethal to anyone that breathes it in, save for Mayuri and his lieutenant Nemu.
Bankai! Behold, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo!
The poison is incredibly potent, and Mayuri can change the exact composition to prevent anyone from developing an immunity or finding a real cure, though both he and Nemu carry an antidote just in case an ally is afflicted. The poison is so toxic that simple skin contact is enough. It doesn't have to be inhaled to take effect. On top of the poison, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo can create a swarm of blades that are sharp enough to skewer opponents, and these blades are also coated with the poison. The creature can even devour foes, killing them outright. Mayuri, being the pragmatically cautious bastard that he is, has installed a self-destruct into his Bankai. In the event that an enemy manages to take control of Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo and it attempts to attack Mayuri, it will immediately dispel and return the weapon to its sealed state.
Too bad your Bankai takes the shape of a living creature that I can control!
My, this is a tool that I created. You think it can defy its master? In the event that it is used against me, I designed it to simply self-destruct.
I may not like the man, but I can't deny that he's got style in a weird alien way. Captain of the 10th Division, Toshiro Hitsugaya, is a fan-favorite character. He's been in the top 10 of character popularity polls, including taking the top slot in the 4th popularity poll, and it's not hard to see why. He's an extremely capable Shinigami, a prodigy, and his Zanpakuto, Hyorinmaru, is hailed as the greatest and most powerful ice element Zanpakuto in all of Soul Society.
Rain over the frosted frozen sky!
His Bankai takes things a step forward. Daiguren Hyorinmaru, translated as Great Crimson Lotus Ice Ring, forms ice around Toshiro's body, a dragon's head around his right hand, a long tail, and huge wings, which leans into the identity of the Zanpakuto spirit, Hyorinmaru, who is an ice dragon. 3 flowers made of ice appear floating behind him, each with 4 petals, and as the battle progresses, these petals melt away.
Bankai Daiguren Hyorinmaru!
Initially, we thought that when the last petal melted, the Bankai would disengage, but that's not true. In fact, the Bankai isn't actually complete until that last petal falls. When that happens, Toshiro rapidly ages up to an adult form, one capable of handling the Bankai in its complete form. In this aged-up form, Toshiro really leans into the Bishonen aesthetic.
Bitch, I'm adorable.
Daiguren Hyorinmaru has a number of different abilities, but they're all focused on ice. Freezing objects and targets, shielding himself with ice wings, and freezing enemies solid with a single stab, then shattering them. He also has Sennen Hyoro, which creates massive ice pillars that encircle and crush his foe, though it takes time to set up. Zanhyo Ningyo creates an incredibly lifelike copy of himself made of ice. This copy can speak, attack, defend, and even bleed, making it perfect as a distraction to help set up Sennen Hyoro. Of course, if his opponent survives his next attack, this ability is difficult to implement a second time, as the enemy now knows Toshiro can do this. My favorite of his Bankai abilities, however, is Hyoten Hyakaso, or Frozen Heaven's 100-Flower Funeral. Toshiro opens a massive hole in the clouds above, and snow begins to fall. Each snowflake that lands on his enemy immediately blossoms into a flower-like ice crystal. Toshiro claims that when the final petal falls, his foe's life will end. That said, we've only ever seen him use it once, against Tres Espada Tyr Halibel, and she survived with minimal damage. Despite that, I still really like the ability. It's just cool.
Hyoten Hyakaso!
Hirvi!
Anything that snow comes in contact with freezes instantly in the shape of a flower. By the time these 100 frozen flowers have blossomed, your life will have disappeared.
Gin Ichimaru is a character that was set up as a red herring very early on, and to accompany that fake-out, his Zanpakuto is also deceptively simple, yet incredibly powerful. His blade, Shinso, literally translated as Sacred Spear, allows him to extend his blade to around 100 times its base length in the blink of an eye and then retract it just as fast, meaning that you're not safe anywhere within that range. His Bankai, however, Kamishini no Yari, literally god-killing spear, takes that a step further, greatly increasing speed, force, and cutting power. At these speeds, he can slice an entire town with a single slash. That's not even the most dangerous part. Kamishini no Yari's most dangerous aspect isn't that it can extend to 13 kilometers and cut through anything in its path, but rather just how fast that extension and contraction is.
I'll tell you how fast Kamishini no Yari can extend itself. Did you hear that? It's 500 times that speed.
This is scary enough, but there's actually something even more terrifying about Gin's Bankai. Korose, Kamishini no Yari, leaves a tiny piece of his blade inside a foe when he cuts them, and this bit of his blade is an insanely potent poison that outright dissolves cells. By calling out the ability's name, Korose, or kill him in the English dub, the poison is activated and it destroys the target from the inside out on a cellular level. Gin almost killed Aizen with this, but Aizen's ascension with the Hogyoku saved him. For anyone else, this would almost certainly be fatal. Maybe Mayuri could use his weird physiology to negate it, but nobody else.
You see this? There's a tiny piece missing. Just now, I left a bit of my blade inside you, Captain. Inside the blade, there is a powerful poison that dissolves and destroys cells rapidly. When I was pulling my sword back out of your chest, I left a fragment of my blade inside of your heart. Kill him. Kamishini no Yari.
Usually when a character is introduced late in a series like Bleach, their power has to be insanely high to match the progression that the main cast has made. In that regard, Ichibe Hyosube does not disappoint. His Zanpakuto is so old that it predates the concept of Bankai. Ichimonji has the power to take and bestow names. His Shikai can paint over a foe's name, taking their power away.
Paint it black. Ichimonji! What's the matter? Not sure if you're seeing a brush or a blade, is that it? You can't defeat me with such a weapon. I will cut more than your name in half with my... What is the name of that sword in your hand? You don't know, do you? Or rather, you know that your sword has no name at all now. You see, anything that gets painted over by my Ichimonji loses its name. That which has no name has no power.
His Shinuchi, basically his Bankai, is Shirafude Ichimonji, literally white brush straight line, and this paints on a new identity and power to whatever it strikes. Whatever he hits takes on not only the name of Ichibe's choice, but everything associated with that name. For example, he can change a foe's name to Black Ant, and they will become as weak and powerless as an ant.
Poor fellow, don't take the loss of your name too hard. Because I'm going to give you a new one. Shinuchi Shirafude Ichimonji. The beauty of this sword is that it can inscribe a new name on whatever has been painted over by Ichimonji. Well, how do you feel now, Black Ant? Knowing your power's no more than that of a tiny ant crawling over the ground for the length of its fleeting and insignificant life, you will bear the weight of the lives of all the soul reapers that you've killed, and be crushed to dust like the crawling black ant you are!
This is, of course, insanely overpowered. He can take your very identity and rewrite you however he likes. I love abilities that tie into the power of a name, so I've always found Ichimonji a really interesting weapon. Rukia Kuchiki, as one of the core members of the cast, has had a lot of development. She appeared in the very first episode of Bleach and has sort of grown with Ichigo, getting better and getting stronger. It wasn't until the Quincy invasion of the Sereite that she finally achieved Bankai. Rukia's Zanpakuto, Sode no Shirayuki, literally translated as sleeved white snow, is easily one of the most beautiful Zanpakuto in all of Bleach. It's as elegant as freshly fallen snow, pure white with an ornate tsuba and a long ribbon attached to the kashira. For the majority of the series, we thought that Rukia's Zanpakuto was an ice element Zanpakuto because, like Toshiro, her Shikai manipulates and creates ice. Even Rukia herself thought so. However, it's actually more of a cold type. It's not directly creating ice. That's more of a side effect of it rapidly reducing the temperature of whatever Rukia attacks. The creation of ice is more of a side effect. This is made quite apparent when Rukia finally achieves Bankai. Haka no Togame, literally center of the white haze, completely changes Rukia's appearance. Her black shihakusho shifts to a gorgeous white kimono, her hair turns white, and translucent icy ribbons appear behind her. In this state, she appears rather similar to her Zanpakuto's spirit as shown in 2 anime-only filler arcs.
Bankai. Haka no Togame!
In this state, Rukia's body is dropped to absolute zero where all molecular movement has ceased. She's effectively in cryogenic stasis, but is still able to act. With a simple gesture of pointing her blade at her enemy, a wave of pure cold washes over her target, reducing them to absolute zero as well, slaying them. Because Rukia is in this sort of stasis, her biological processes stop entirely. She won't bleed from any of the injuries she sustained, poisons won't spread in her body, and so on. This became integral to her defeat of the Quincy Asnot, who used spiritual poison to inflict total fear in his targets. Since Rukia wasn't technically alive anymore, the poison had no effect.
As long as you're alive, fear will always have an effect. There is no escaping it.
You see, by carefully controlling and regulating my reishi, I've gained the ability to temporarily kill my body.
Of course, this is an incredibly dangerous ability to use, and Rukia can't stay in Bankai for too long or she could actually die. When exiting Bankai, she can't just drop out of it. The sudden change in temperature could kill her. Instead, she has to slowly raise her body temperature up so she can gradually return to her normal state. Her victory over Asnot through her Bankai also earned her praise from the person she sought approval from the most, her older brother Byakuya.
That was a magnificent Bankai. Nothing is served by swinging a sword when the cost of doing so is your life. Come, Rukia. Let us go protect the Soul Society.
I love Rukia. She's got a really fun personality, she's cute, and she has a really awesome sword. I'm going to shout out a great video by an awesome YouTuber and fellow Rukia lover here. Click the card on screen to check out Tekking 101's video on Rukia and let him know I sent you. In the top 7 Shikai video, we talked about Hirako Shinji's Sakanade. It hit number 3 there, and his Bankai takes the number 2 slot. Sakanade, Shinji's Shikai if you recall, inverts the target's physical senses, up and down, right and left, front and back, and so on. So what is a natural evolution of that? Well, Shinji's Bankai, Sakashima Yokoshima Happofusagari, literally translated as Reversed Evil 8 Treasure Blockade, inverts ideals. It flips alignment.
Bankai. Sakashima Yokoshima Happofusagari.
This is more than just swapping the alignment of groups as a whole. Each individual's alignment with regards to those around them is flipped as well. For example, if Shinji uses it when there are 3 fighters of the opposing army present, it won't just make them his ally, it'll make them perceive each other as enemies as well. Their relationship to Shinji is reversed, but so is their perception of their own relationships to their comrades.
Now you've really gone and done it. You're probably thinking I should surrender, since I'm so hopelessly outnumbered. There are certain techniques I can finally use now that they're gone. Your perception, your whole reality, it's about to get flipped upside down. Your sense of enemy and ally has been reversed, making you attack your own side.
Further, Shinji cannot discriminate. Anyone caught in the range of his Bankai will be affected, which means that his allies will have their alignment switched as well.
Unfortunately, the way enemies and allies are all mixed up in the Serite right now, I can't just use it whenever and wherever I want.
Because of this, Shinji cannot safely use Sakashima Yokoshima Happofusugari around his friends, and its use in the Serite is completely banned. Shinji does make an exception during the Quincy invasion to make an entire squad of Quincy Soldat attack each other. I really like Sakashima Yokoshima Happofusugari because it's a fascinating ability, being able to flip the concept of allies and enemies. It's also a lot of fun to say. Sakashima Yokoshima Happofusugari. So baby, and at number 1, we have the blade of the lead character Ichigo Kurosaki's Tensa Zangetsu. Now, Ichigo has had a few different iterations over the span of the series. His first one, which he used up until his defeat of Aizen when he lost his powers, then his full-bring Bankai that he acquired during the Lost Substitute Shinigami arc until it was destroyed by Haschwalth, and finally his true Zanpakuto, which he obtained while training with the Zero Division. Personally, I prefer the original, but we'll talk about all of them. Ichigo's power and where it all comes from could be its own whole video, but we're just going to focus on Tensa Zangetsu today.
Bankai! Tensa Zangetsu.
Tensa Zangetsu, literally translated as Heaven Chain Slaying Moon, is the step beyond Ichigo's base weapon, Zangetsu. His earliest version seems to offend Byakuya when the two fight, Ichigo's giant steak knife-shaped Shikai shrinking into a sleek long blade. What Byakuya realizes as Ichigo attacks with his Bankai is that it's shedding the excess weight to amplify Ichigo's speed and power, making him far faster.
I see. By focusing all the fighting power of the Bankai in that small blade, that Bankai gives you incredible power. Its size combined with its intensity allow you to fight at unimaginable speeds.
Interestingly, the release of Tensa Zangetsu also changes Ichigo's clothes, which we see occasionally but isn't super common. His usual black shihakusho changes into more of a cloak. The weapon itself is an all-black sword, somewhere in length between a katana and an odachi, with black and red wraps on the tsuka and a short chain hanging off the kashira. The tsuba is not shaped like a Nazi swastika, but rather salvastika, which symbolizes the knight and the footprints of the Buddha. I don't have the expertise to discuss this sort of thing in any detail, just know that it was a symbol of prosperity long before those douchebag asshat Nazis corrupted it. When Bankai is activated, Zangetsu's ability, Getsuga Tensho, also changes. In Ichigo's Shikai, it's a bright blue-white flash of light and power that smashes his foes, a focusing of his spiritual power through the blade into a destructive wave. In Bankai, Getsuga Tensho gains far more power and changes to black and red, leaning into the hollow aspects of Ichigo's soul.
Getsuga Tensho!
After defeating Aizen, Ichigo lost his powers, and as the Zanpakuto is an extension of the Shinigami's soul, he lost access to Zangetsu. However, he rebuilt his weapon by working with Execution, a group of Fullbringers. With Rukia's help, Ichigo was reinfused with Shinigami powers and now is able to call upon Zangetsu once more, but it looks different because of Ichigo's focus on his Fullbring powers. His Shikai is now less of an oversized steak knife and has a more developed curve. His Bankai is longer, more curved, and has a trio of teeth along the back of the weapon. When Ichigo engaged Yhwach for the first time, this Fullbring Bankai was snapped in half, and he spent time with the original creator of the Zanpakuto and imprinted on an Asauchi, a blank slate for a Shinigami to develop their Zanpakuto. This, his true Zangetsu, is again vastly different. In Shikai, Zangetsu is now two swords, and to activate Bankai, he places the two together and they fuse into a single weapon with both white and black, embodying the balance between his Shinigami and hollow powers. The original version of Tensa Zangetsu is my favorite by far, but that's not to say the others aren't cool, they absolutely are. I love his Getsuga Tensho as well. It's a very simple and straightforward ability for a very straightforward fighter, and the name is awesome, not to mention how cool it is when he yells, Bankai! Let's be honest, Ichigo absolutely did not need to go Bankai here. He's just showing off. That's not a bad thing, that's just who he is. He's only 17 here and he's always been prone to being very over the top. That's just part of being a shonen protagonist and part of why we love Ichigo as a character. So that's my top 7 favorite Bankai. Do you agree with my list? What are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments. I'm by no means a native Japanese speaker. I had to try pronouncing some of these dozens of times before I got them right. I hope my pronunciation mistakes didn't make the Japanese speakers in the audience cringe hard enough to create a black hole. If any of the Japanese speakers in my audience want to point out any mispronunciations, please do. I always want to get better to bring you all higher quality content. Thank you so much for watching. I put a lot of work into these videos, so you watching them to the end means a lot to me. Please, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It all really helps. There's a new video every single Friday, as well as posts and polls, and, as you can see, bonus videos every so often. If you want to see my video talking about the captain of the 2nd Division, Soifone, and why she's so great, click here. Or click here for my top 7 favorite Shikai. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.